putting more effort into practicing the wrong thing won't get you anywhere. I've seen this with almost every student who comes to me stuck, and when we fix it, it's always by fundamentally changing what they're working on. So in this video, I'll show you why you end up practicing the wrong things, what actually matters for real progress, and how to work out where your practice needs to change. Now, it's all very well for me to say you're not getting anywhere because you're practicing the wrong things, but what then are the right things, and why aren't you practicing them to start with? Now, I can't give you a very specific answer just for your individual situation because these details are going to be different for everyone, but I can tell you how to work this out for yourself. And we need to start by understanding what the problem is in the first place. And it is that some things are just naturally much easier to practice than other things are. And again, even for the things that you can practice, some of them it's really easy to measure how you're getting on, and for others it's much harder. And the unfortunate thing is the things that are easy to practice and easy to measure are not necessarily the things that really matter. And in fact, I'd go further, I'd say they're usually not the things that really matter. But the trouble is, it's just human nature to default to the things that I can easily see, oh, that's how I'm going to practice this. This is what I'm going to work on. Or the ones where I can see, oh, that's how I measure this. Here's where I am now, here's where I want to get to, and I can track whether I'm making progress or not. But here's the thing, it's much better to work on something that matters with a rough and ready approach that you hope might give you some progress than it is to work on something unimportant where you've got an amazing guaranteed way to improve it. And equally, it's much better to struggle to make an informed guess at whether something that matters is really improving when you can't be sure, than it is to track something that doesn't matter and be able to track it perfectly precisely and know exactly what's going on there. So let's do some practical examples. It's much easier to teach and practice scales than it is to teach and practice musical expression. There are all sorts of different specific scales I can give you. I can give you sheet music for them. I can show you them on the instrument. There are specific notes in them. I can watch and see, did you play the right note? Did you play the wrong note? How many scales have you learned? How fast can you play them? All that sort of stuff. Whereas musical expression, it's much harder to pin down. What exactly is going on in my mind about what I want? How do I turn that into physical movements to produce feelings? How do I then communicate that to you? How do I check you're doing all those sorts of things? Much harder. Not completely impossible, but much harder. And again, on the measurement side, it's much easier, for example, to measure the speed you can play something at against your rhythmic feel, your sense of groove, because I can just take a metronome. I can keep cranking the speed up. At what point do I start making mistakes? At what point can I not keep up? I can just have a number there and check whether I'm meeting it. Whereas for the rhythmic feel, groove is a very subjective thing. It's something that we find much harder to measure with actual just straight numbers and get a machine to just tell you what the answer is. So it's much harder to tell, am I improving with my ability to groove? But it does really matter, and it is something that you can get at in a rough way. And so it's worth taking the effort to make that much harder, much less precise measurement. And what does this actually mean in practice? Well, the first thing, obviously, is that you need to work out what really matters. And of course, this is not something that really matters for everything in music. There are some things that are common, but ultimately it comes down to you. So you've got to know where you want to go. And then you've got to be honest about where you are right now. Because when you know those two things, where do you specifically want to get to? Where are you? Then you can see where is the gap and what are the biggest things you need to work on to close the gap in a meaningful way. Not what are all the little things that you could do that improve some area of your music that either takes you off in completely the wrong direction. You want to go over here and you're going to practice something you can measure that goes over there. That's no good. Or equally, things where you can say, well, that is moving me in the right direction, but if I improve this, I get a tiny little bit of the way there. Whereas if I work on this other stuff that's harder, that I can't really measure, that's 90% of the gap right there. And a lot of the trouble is that usually the things that are going to close the gap in a meaningful way are the big picture stuff. It's not learning more scales or getting that metronome speed faster most of the time. It's things like, how do you actually turn up and perform well rather than being able to practice at home okay, but you just fall on stage in performance. It's about having a great rhythmic feel or the ability to play in time. It's those sorts of things that are trickier, but usually they're the biggest things standing between us and the music that we want to play. So the thing you really need to focus on is can I get the important things roughly right? If you're focused on the most important things, it doesn't matter whether it's perfect or not. It doesn't matter if our way of practicing something is the absolute best way of doing it. It doesn't matter if we can't measure our progress exactly, because at the end of the day, you'll get much more benefit from working on the right things and then kind of finding your way roughly around all those bits than working on the wrong things and being able to do it perfectly, track everything perfectly.